All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. We're so pleased to have you here for the State of the University Address. I want to especially welcome members of our Board of Trustees that are here with us today. We have TJ Fund, Steve Lund, Trevor Took, who are here, and I might have missed others. I can't see you, actually, all up there. But we want to welcome each and every one of you for the State of the University Address. You know, several times during the year we get together as a university community, and this is one of them. It's a great time to get to see people from across the campus and to share that UVU feeling that we have. I want you to notice we had a couple of others up here on the screen that are coming right up this week that you may also want to participate in with Gordon Wood and others. So keep an eye out for those. Those are other opportunities to really interact as a university community. Well, today we do have the State of the University Address, and probably everything you need to know is in that address, so I don't have a lot else to say. I guess I should also welcome Paige and Danny Holland, who are here as the members of our UVU family, and to say, other than that, it's my great pleasure to introduce the 6th president of Utah Valley University, Matthew S. Holland.
Well, as always, it's truly an honor to speak with you. I'll also confess that doing so remains a little bit intimidating. Such feeling makes me think of my favorite, if often less quoted, line from Yogi Berra. Yogi in the 1950s, when he's at the height of his stardom with the Yankees, doing a lot of public speaking, was at a big affair in New York City that had all of the movers and shakers in town there, and he always did a pretty good job of masking his nerves, but inside he was sort of a wreck. And as he was sitting there on the podium getting ready for this big event, the mayor's wife walked by and commented on how cool he looked. His nerves got the best of him, and he shot back, "Well, you don't look so hot yourself." I thought I might begin this morning by offering a few general observations now that I've been here for a little bit and can find my way around the place. In appropriate academic style, I will provide these observations according to a sophisticated taxonomy developed by Professor David Letterman, as found in his collected works published by Worldwide Pants. So here we go with my top 10 presidential observations. Presidential observation number 10. More so than any other institution I know, there are a lot of guys around named Val. Presidential observation number 9. It's technologically possible for an email box to consistently receive more than 200 emails a day. Number 8. One stop and the men's room are not the same thing. UVU has more acronyms than the Army. This was a conversation the other day. Hey, Kyle, let's go to the SDAC and talk PBA after I finish the SBDC and the SC213. Observation number 6, the total number of calories I've consumed in UVU desserts is a figure roughly equal to the national debt. Number 5, those who claim Linda Macon is a genius are seriously mistaken. She's much smarter than that. Number 4, Corey does not laugh when you ask him what's a duck worth these days. Actually, around here, a duck worth is worth a lot these days, so. Observation number 3, there's a reason, and a good one, why some, and only some, of Chuck Allison's fingernails are longer than Liz Hitch's. You'll have to check that out for yourself. Okay, on a more serious note, observation number 2. One thing I have noticed and absolutely love about this place is that this campus is abundantly populated with smart and generous personnel who give so much more than is typically asked, especially when it appears it will make a difference in the lives and development of our students. Observation number one. I've also noticed that no matter what seems to hit this university, say for instance massive budget cuts in combination with record levels of enrollment, it remains an institution undaunted, an institution forging ahead, getting better at what it does every single day. I truly stand in awe as I look back and see what has happened just during the brief time I have been here, with most of the credit for these accomplishments going to other people. Highlights here include the following. The new Center for Student Success opened its door to provide much-needed space to Student Affairs Division. The state-of-the-art facility welcomes students to a wide range of student support opportunities in very modern and comfortable surroundings. Personalized, seamless, and intentional advising is moving forward in this structure to ensure that students from acceptance to career placement have every opportunity to realize their educational objectives. Budget adjustments last year required the restructuring of the Wasatch campus. At that time, we made promises that essential services would not be cut and that all appropriate academic offerings would be maintained. I am happy to report to our important constituents in Wasatch and Summit counties that our promises have been kept and enrollments have actually increased slightly. We've also arranged for food services to be available at the campus site. Special thanks to those dedicated employees who wear many hats in meeting the needs of our students. Over a brief span and in the midst of one of the most challenging economic times in recent memory, we raised approximately $1 million to secure an all-Steinway designation for our music department. Adding the Steinway name, and more importantly, adding many of their finest pianos to our university has instantly enhanced the quality and reputation of our music programs and made recruiting top-notch faculty and students an easier task. You may have seen the marketing campaign that has helped generate excitement about our third master's degree. This fall, we will welcome 40 students to the new MBA program, which I'm confident will quickly become a signature program for our institution. This April, we will award our first master's degree in education. In producing 15 highly trained teachers and leaders for our public schools in this first graduating cohort, Dean Bryant Farnsworth and his outstanding faculty in the School of Education have set the bar high for all subsequent graduate programs at UVU. Our athletic program has enjoyed remarkable success in its first official year of NCAA Division I competition and membership in the Great West Conference. We have already won several conference championships in track and soccer and will likely win more in other sports before the end of the year. Just last weekend, the wrestling team recently defeated 8th-ranked Boise State and gave stiff competition to top-ranked Iowa. And if you missed Ronnie Price's induction into the UVU Hall of Fame, you missed a great example of all that is right and good in intercollegiate athletics. Ronnie's a tremendous person and a wonderful ambassador for UVU. I've also been gratified with how quickly we have been able to take a large load of material concerning our mission, vision, and values and integrate that rich but somewhat unwieldy substance into a more simplified set of core themes and administrative imperatives. After some healthy campus-wide dialogue and give and take, a fairly broad consensus has emerged concerning our efforts to be as an institution serious in our quest for academic and professional excellence, inclusive in the way that we reach out to students, staff, and faculty, and engaged in hands-on learning as well as in the issues, problems, and opportunities of our local, national, and global communities. What I find most exhilarating about this is that these are not themes we are just talking about, but themes that are daily shaping the activities and direction of the campus. At this point, I'd like to speak directly to a couple of organizational moves I'm making in order to foster greater integrity to our themes and imperatives. As I've indicated, central to our institutional mission and aim is a commitment to engaged learning and community engagement. In the first 2 years of operation and 4 rounds of grant funding, the Center for Engaged Learning has facilitated many extraordinary successful projects that involved our students and faculty and staff in community-based learning. When the center was first established by President Cederberg, he located it in the Office of the President in order to signal the importance of community engagement for Utah's newest university. Under Jack Christensen's leadership and with some very helpful assistance from Vince Fortiani in the last 6 months, the center's partnerships and granting functions have matured nicely and their profile is established. At the same time, the foundation of community-engaged learning in our academic units has grown, and the need for better coordination of the center's activities with departments and colleges is even more apparent than it was at the center's inception. Thus, it makes sense now for the grants operation of the center, Thus, it makes sense now for the grants operation of the center, as supported by Vince Fortiani, to be fully integrated into academic affairs. I've asked Vice President Hitch to consider the best organizational fit for the grants program within academic affairs and to begin the fall 2010 semester with that component of the center reporting appropriately within her division. During the interim phase, Vince will continue to run the grant process out of the executive division, reporting to my office and acting in council with the grant approval committee. I would note here that as we make this move, we will ensure that however the particular arrangements develop in academic affairs, the grant process will remain committed to involving staff and community. Of course, this move invites the question of what happens to Jack Christensen's position. As the CEL grant process matured, Jack was increasingly spending his time building new long-term and robust community partnerships that would provide a pipeline of engaged learning opportunities for the institution. This remains a critical task, and the personnel needs required to fulfill it dovetail nicely with another move we must make. As I explained in the integration sessions last fall, securing additional resources for the institution is one of three critical administrative imperatives. While our main supply of financial resources will continue to come from tuition and tax funds, it is absolutely critical that we become more focused, coordinated, and sophisticated in our private fundraising efforts. Consequently, I will use Jack's line to establish a new vice presidency focused exclusively on development and alumni, the two key organizational pillars of any effective fundraising school. Within the next couple of days, we will open a 45-day national and local search for candidates. I'm pleased that Dean Bruce Christensen, a man with years of not-for-profit national fundraising experience under his belt from the days when he headed up PBS, will chair this search. The remaining components of the current advancement portfolio, namely marketing, international diplomacy, and special events, will remain with Val Hale, who will become Vice President of University Relations. In addition to these existing assignments, Val will pick up Jack's mandate to go out and establish solid new community partnerships conducive to appropriate engaged learning projects. He will also pick up many of the duties Jack assumed as Special Assistant to the President, namely helping with presidential level hosting, communications, and community interactions. To those concerned about adding another Vice President at a time of budget reductions, I hear you, but let me note the following. First, I'm not adding any new line to the executive division. Rather, I'm simply rearranging existing lines and resources, and will also do so in a way that does not require an additional PBA request for additional administrative support. In fact, the sum of these moves is that one of the reporting lines in my office, that held by Vince Fortiani, now moves from the executive division to academic affairs. But even if this were not the case, I am convinced this move is the right one. Precisely because resources are scarce, we must make energetic investment in those efforts best designed to secure us more resources. A focused and first-rate fundraising team will do just that. While we're on the subject of securing resources, let me give you an update on where things stand with respect to recent and anticipated legislative action. As university leadership predicted, last year's 17% reduction in state tax fund revenues was not temporary. The actions implemented last spring, including reductions identified by divisions in the central administration, second-tier tuition increase, and a voluntary separation incentive program, fully responded to that 17% reduction and maintained the structural soundness of UVU's operating budget. To soften the blow of this cut, the 2009 legislature appropriated over $5 million of one-time funds to UVU for 2009-10. Unfortunately, as a result of continued decline in state tax fund revenues, the governor needed to order at the end of last year a one-time reduction of just over $2 million. As communicated to campus last month, UVU's response to this one-time cut includes implementing hiring restrictions, using prior year central carry-forward funds, allocating tuition revenues from spring 2010 enrollment growth, and implementing a temporary employer medical premium reduction. We do appreciate that the governor recommended these one-time cuts be restored in 2010-11, and we are hopeful that the legislature will support that recommendation. New tax fund revenue projections are expected on Tuesday, February 16th, which will influence the direction of the final weeks of this legislative session. What we know today is that the legislature has adopted a very cautious approach to the budget. In fact, this past week, the legislature passed a base operating budget bill for 2010-11, which included an additional 2% tax fund reduction for higher education. That reduction equates to just over $1 million for UVU. Should that reduction stand at the conclusion of the legislative session, higher education institutions will have realized a 19% of ongoing reduction to tax fund revenues since July 1st, 2008. Beyond that, the Executive Appropriations Committee ordered each legislative appropriations committee to identify reductions equivalent to 5%, meaning 3% beyond the bill that is just passed. As mentioned earlier, the governor's budget recommended no additional cuts to higher education, and the legislature's Higher Education Appropriations Subcommittee will recommend to the Executive Appropriations Committee next week that higher education receive no additional cuts. We remain hopeful that the most recent 2% reduction will be restored before the end of the session. We also appreciate that the Higher Ed Appropriations Subcommittee is recommending that institutions be allowed flexibility if the cuts stand. Should the current or additional base cuts occur then, and we retain flexibility in making decisions, we will consider additional but minimal expenditure reductions, use of second-tier tuition increase, and/or the use of tuition revenue from enrollment growth to balance the operating budget. With what we are currently anticipating, we are predicting no further programmatic or personnel cuts. In fact, there is actually some good news in all of this too. While tax fund revenues remain uncertain, UVU is realizing growth in tuition revenue due to our increased enrollments. These growth tuition dollars, combined with additional tuition revenue planned from a second-tier tuition increase for 2010-11, will allow the institution to allocate resources to support enrollment growth and fund some initiatives, both one-time and base, that support our mission and core themes. I and the Cabinet, in consultation with UVU's leadership team, will be identifying initiatives presented during the PBA conversations for funding. Please join me on April 14th for lunch, where the final outcomes of this legislative session and funding allocations will be presented. The other issue of keen interest with respect to securing resources is the status of the science building. I continue to expend a considerable effort on this project, convinced it is our single greatest need at the moment. For a reminder of why, we will now watch a short video presentation that I had prepared to share with legislators and potential donors. Let's watch the
Exciting things are happening at UVU's College of Science and Health. The majority of pre-med graduates are accepted into top medical schools, and demand for math and science graduates as educators has created a backlog for their services in local public schools. UVU nurses currently staff about 80% of openings in Utah Valley's care facilities, and UVU's Master of Science in Nursing degree accepted its first students in 2009. These excellent students learn from some of the country's top minds, including physics professor Steve Wasserbeck, who is one of only a handful of U.S. scientists on appointment at the renowned CERN lab in Switzerland. These successes come at a time when space is a critical issue.
This is the biotech research facility. This is the only space that we're allowed to use to do student research. There are about 20 students that do biotechnology research, and about 10 to 15 at any given time are trying to use this space to get work done.
UVU has the fewest square feet per student of any public institution in Utah, and the pinch is especially challenging for the College of Science and Health, which has only 59 square feet per student.
We've reached a critical point. Students who need particular classes are finding that they simply can't get into them. There's not space available.
I remember doing undergraduate research last year as I'm in a closet. that's an overfill for physiology, and I'm trying to do scientific research to get into medical school.
I wish I would have graduated in exactly 4 years. It took me a little bit longer, and that was mostly due to the fact that a lot of my classes were only offered at select times, and they kind of overlapped just because space was unavailable. They weren't able to offer as many classes or sections of the courses because there wasn't enough room.
With student numbers expanding by the thousands every year, we simply don't have enough classrooms for them. We need to have the types of laboratories that will give these students the experience they need.
UVU's current science building was constructed when there were only 8,000 students on campus, whereas today, UVU's enrollment is nearly 29,000 and growing.
When I began here in 1986, I was one of 3 faculty members in biology. We now have 20, plus a half dozen staff people. Just trying to find spaces to house the people that support our programs has become extremely difficult. I spent time, for example, in a janitorial closet as an office for a couple of years.
This overcrowding affects students and faculty in the classroom, in the lab, and as they traverse the packed hallways.
Much of our equipment is now being stored under our stairwell because we have no room for it. That is a problem because our TEMs and SEM capabilities are sort of fading in the sense that this machinery really needs to be stored under appropriate conditions to work properly.
While the economic downturn may restrict appropriations for new buildings this year, it is an ideal time to bond for a new science building at UVU. In addition, UVU has proven to be a good investment, returning every state dollar more than 6-fold for an annual economic impact of more than $300 million.
I just want to say thank you for taking the time to consider the need of UVU's new science building. It will truly bless the lives of hundreds of thousands of students, the communities they'll serve, and the people of the great state of Utah. So sincerely, thank you.
It's the right time to invest in a new building for the students and faculty of UVU's College of Science and Health.
Despite the powerful arguments in our favor, just over a month ago, key figures in both the legislative and executive branches indicated we had little or no chance of getting the building funded during this year's legislative session. However, today there are some signs of life for this project. Along with Val Peterson, I've had numerous meetings with the governor, members of the legislative leadership team in both the House and the Senate, and the chairs of the Capitol Facility Appropriations Committee. Along with Val Hale, I've made the rounds to various news outlets, including KSL, which ran a prominent editorial last week calling upon legislators to fund our science building. We've also been hard at work with trustees, foundation members, and existing and potential donors to raise some private funds to help lower the costs associated with this building, which the legislature always appreciates. I'm proud that our student leaders have also gotten involved with this project. Altogether, we have raised over $1 million in donated monies or hard pledges towards the science building and appear to be close to having that figure doubled. This is no mean accomplishment in our current economic climate and a real tribute to the generosity of our school's great benefactors and the power of teamwork that exists on this campus. Currently, we are hopeful that our science building will be one of 4 projects which Capitol Facilities Committee will be recommending the legislature should fund this year. Things look promising, at least for that recommendation, which we hope to hear about soon, perhaps even by the end of this speech. They're meeting right now. That said, we still have a long 3.5 weeks ahead of us before the legislature closes on March 11th and final decisions are made. In order to fund those 4 projects, the legislature will have to bond and do so with extremely limited funds to pay back the debt service on that bond. The hurdles here are multiple and remain high, but we will forge ahead every single day explaining that there's not a more critical capital facilities need anywhere in the system of Utah State higher education. I want to thank all of you who have taken the time to contact your legislators with your letters, phone calls, and emails. As long as these messages avoid incivility and whining, they have a great positive effect. As I close, I would like to return to our core themes and raise 2 points. First, as Utah Valley University forges ahead into the future, it is confronted with a challenging dilemma. A genuine commitment to being a serious university would seem to require, inevitably, the introduction of some kind of enrollment standards, a gradual escalation of those standards, and greater focus on high-end educational programming and faculty scholarship. Increasingly, such moves will be essential for UVU to attract and retain exceptional students and outstanding teaching faculty, so essential for providing the kind of rigorous and well-rounded university education that more and more of the students in this region will need to compete and to flourish here in the 21st century. I say this recognizing that such a shift in institutional culture will be welcomed by a good number of you, but it will also likely evoke trepidation for many of you concerned about remaining inclusive and adequately serving the large numbers of students at different levels of preparation who continually enroll at this institution. With the state currently headed in the wrong direction with respect to the percentage of students going on to get college degrees, UVU's historic role of providing meaningful, career-oriented education to a wide spectrum of citizens through open enrollment seems more critical than ever. The burgeoning population base and economic diversification of the region requires a renewed emphasis on creating ever more access for associate degrees, career and technical education, and non-credit job training programs. These are primary, even fundamental educational alternatives that should be celebrated for their significant earning potential and quality of life enhancements they offer to our students. So the dilemma facing us today, a dilemma made all the more acute by our record-breaking enrollments, is this: how do we avoid having the university's serious trajectory completely overshadow its efforts to remain inclusive, or vice versa? As I see it, no easy answers to this question exist. However, I call upon the full university community to join with me in the days and months ahead in thinking about this dilemma, and to consider what steps could be taken in order to bring these sometimes competing forces into a greater degree of complementary alignment here at UVU. While I am under no illusions concerning the difficulty inherent in figuring out how to shore up both sides of this delicate educational question, I am absolutely energized by the challenge. And I also want to say here that my great optimism and energy for such a task resides significantly in you. As I look out in the audience, which I can't really do because I can't see anything, but if I could look out into the audience, what I would see is a magnificent and unique collection of faculty and staff, so many of whom have voiced a great desire to see the university get better and better while continuing to serve as as broad a population of students as possible. I simply cannot think of, and I certainly have never been to another university where such otherwise dueling sentiments rest so firmly together among so many. Given that fact, I believe we are well positioned to try to do something unique on this campus. That is, I believe we have a distinctive set of physical and human assets that leave us positioned to explore and creatively develop a model of higher education that could be looked to across the nation, an institution that figured out how to become a truly great university while still providing tremendous levels of access to populations of students who perhaps need the leg up of higher education the most. I relish the chance to see if we cannot figure out how to go do just that. The final point I wish to make about our core themes is that while I hear a lot of productive discussion about engaged, serious, and inclusive, the fourth and central part of our integration model sometimes seems to get lost. Recall that at the heart of the integration model I rolled out last fall, engaged, serious, and inclusive were all centered on one thing: student success. This is the critical point that we should not lose track of rhetorically. On the other hand, I must say that even if we do not mention it as much as some of the other core themes, I believe our practices underscore our values here more than our words sometimes do. Just this week, I was told of a story that underscores this point. One of our fine UVU employees, who is also a student in our Emergency Services Administration program, entered the Utah National Guard in March of 2007. Following 4 months of training, this fine man was deployed to Iraq. On March 15, 2008, he was on a humanitarian assignment, delivering food, school supplies, and other necessities to local villagers. Sometime during the mission, the driver of his armored vehicle got stuck in the mud, overcorrected, and went into a 4-foot-tall concrete barricade. In what should have been his final mission following a year-long deployment, our student sustained a traumatic brain injury and was medically evacuated first to Mosul, Iraq, then Balad, Iraq, Ramstein, Germany, Landstuhl, Germany, and finally Fort Sam, Houston. He arrived home July 2008. Despite partial paralysis on his left side, difficulty with his speech, seizures, and post-traumatic stress disorder, this student has spent the last 2 years finishing the remaining 3 courses of a BS in Emergency Services Administration. The last hurdle was using Philosophy 1250, logical thinking, and philosophical writing to fulfill the quantitative reasoning requirement of the degree. After discussing the issues with the Philosophy and Humanities Department and meeting with Ed Martinelli, Director of Accessibility Services, a plan was in place. What Dennis Potter of the Philosophy and Humanities Department did for this student this past semester was not part of the plan. Dennis met with him privately for 2 hours each week and tutored him on a personal level. Thanks to this added personal effort, and thanks to countless more hours offered by family, co-workers, UVU advisors, staff, and faculty, this student has now met all requirements for graduation and plans on continuing a career in emergency services. A student serving his country and the people of another. A faculty member reaching out, giving more than expected to a student focused in a field quite different from his own. A teamwork of individuals determined to maintain institutional integrity to certain academic standards, but finding a way to make it work for the one in an unusual set of circumstances. Engaged, inclusive, serious, student success, it's all right there. And I know this is just one of the countless stories I could share that captures the absolutely heroic efforts that you faculty, staff, and students engage in every day. And so I end where I began. It is an honor, a true and distinctive honor, to work with such diligent, intelligent, and good-hearted individuals who give so much in the cause of something so grand and so good, the shaping and lifting of the great students who grace our halls. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to step out from the spotlight here, and I'm happy to spend a few more minutes with you if you'd like to just take some questions if you have them. Well, I've apparently solved all of life's questions. That's not a bad day's work. So. I might have Val Peterson come up and sing, so.
Just a quick question. With the dilemma that you proposed to us, how would you ask that we go forward in helping solve this dilemma?
Well, first of all, I want to lay out today a kind of a marker of this is, I think, the key issue for us to be thinking about as a community. So part of it is just to get the wheels spinning for people, thinking about it. What are the trade-offs? What are the dilemmas? Where can we go? Where should we go? We're thinking about this at the administration level. I'll be inviting, beyond this kind of general announcement, in other times and places, people to engage in. So this is something that our Strategic Directions Advisory Committee will pick up as a topic. And I think coming out of these conversations, you'll see in the weeks or months ahead something a little bit more formal to solicit some university community input on the issue. Thanks for the question, Richard. Anything else? Yeah.
universities focus on graduate level academics, or what exactly does that mean in terms of direction that we want to go?
Sure. Thanks, David. For me, it's all three of the terms are broad, and some of this I did with the faculty and staff, and we haven't had as much student interaction on this, but these themes I've used are trying to integrate a whole range of issues that have been showing up in mission statements, value statements, strategic objective statements. Under the heading of serious, at one level it means immediately academic rigor. It means getting better as a university, more standards for our students, for the faculty, conducting business the way serious first-rate universities conduct business in the classroom and in faculty life. But it's also broader than that. It means that we're serious about everything we do. So it's not at the exclusive domain of the academic world, but we're serious about how we manicure the lawns around here. I remember one of the first things I heard when I showed up here was Val Peterson talking about how carefully we try to cut the lawns, that we do things with excellence, and that universities are places that should reflect the highest values of human excellence across many different dimensions, and so that wouldn't just be true in the academic thing. In terms of the graduate question, it means that we're certainly open to that. Good universities have good graduate programs. We're, of course, not on a trajectory to become aggressively a Tier 1 research institution, but we will look for those master's programs in high-demand areas that can move us forward with those upper-end academic programming, but we'll move forward deliberately on that and consistent with what the needs of the region
are. Those of us in student government are well aware of the need for equity funding for Utah Valley University. What steps, if any, are being done to push for that?
Well, this year is the year to fight for the science building. This is not the year to fight for equity, okay? We're going to fight for equity. We deserve it. We need it. We're going to have it to achieve our highest ambitions. But when the state legislature is in the middle of cutting everybody's budgets, I think the best we can hope for this year is to try to minimize those budget cuts. We've worked very hard, I think, as a system, particularly with the governor's office, to keep those cuts as low and minimal as possible. The governor's budget, while it has cut us somewhat, is providing great air cover against some things that the legislature is thinking about. So if we can minimize those cuts, if we can get this science building, that would be definition of victory this year. And then we're in a position to say, all right, now let's take a look at how we're funded relative to other institutions and make that a major effort of our public strategies with our legislators and the larger state community.
Addressing the theme of seriousness, I was wondering if you could speak to the issue of whether or not UVU will ever have a provost instead of an academic vice president.
I'm not opposed to a provost model. I think that I'm not in any hurry to make that move right now, as I'm here my first year, getting a sense for how things are going to operate. We've made some organizational changes these days. I think Vice President Hitch and I have a great working relationship, and as the university moves forward, and as my role unfolds and we think about the trade-offs between external responsibilities and internal responsibilities, that's certainly an option. That's not off the table, and if it makes the right sense, the right time, we'll give it consideration. For right now, while I've made, as I've just done here today, some emphasis on the need for private fundraising and external relations, this theme of seriousness suggests that I'm going to be a president that pays attention to the internal operations of the university. So I think we'll move forward in this in a deliberate fashion and consider it an option that may be pursued in the future but not immediately.
I read this morning that you were recently named to the Board of Trustees of Utah Technical College, so congratulations.
Is that right? Oh, thank you.
Congrats. I've got a Google News alert for Matt Holland, so
okay.
Anytime anything happens
I'll
on the
check
internet
with you, Vigor. So,
but I wanted to know what that might mean for the future of trades here at UVU.
In terms of the board, are you serious about the board appointment thing? Yeah. Okay. Well, that's news to me. So, okay. I'll have to check out and see what I've agreed to do. Apparently, what I can say is just an echo of what I've just said here. You know, I think there's been some sense. You know, Matt Holland comes from a academic background, a researching, publishing professor. Those things have been important to me. And I think elements of those must be part of a great, serious university. But we have a unique mission here. We do have this great history, and so much of what this institution does and still needs to do for this community centers around some of those trade and technical education processes. So that takes us back to our dilemma. We need to continue to embrace those things. We need to figure out how we promote that aspect of our educational mission along with the other objectives we have as we grow and develop the university. So, and I'll go get my agent to figure out what I've been committed to. So, yeah, there's Mike Freeman had a comment, and then there was a hand up there.
My question was kind of a subset of that. I was curious about where UVU West was going and how that's figuring in, and I see that I think they're building a new building for Mountain West Applied Technical College out at Thanksgiving Point, and so all that.
Yeah, so the MATC is moving up to their Lehigh site. You can see the construction from I-15. That's going to be ready, I think the plan is a year from this next Christmas. And most of MATC should be out of that building and up to our Lehigh site. That does free up the space for us to inhabit. There's a lot going on there already with the health component of our health and science colleges. And so that appears to be a locus for those programs right now. Whether that will occupy the whole building or not, we'll take it in a staged process. But at least the initial direction is that those programs will inhabit some of the spaces that frees up, and we'll take it, you know, kind of in 6-month increments as the space opens up. Yeah, there's a couple of other hands up.
As I travel the community in the Valley, that's part of my job here, I talk to a lot of, you know, working people and various people who have a need for online classes. And I'm just curious what your vision is, if you feel that's an important niche we have or not.
Yeah, that's, thank you for that question. It's a really important thing. We are currently in the process of trying to hire someone to take us to the next level of what we can do with online education. Now, let me be clear about what I think we should not become, which is something like University of Phoenix, where we're trying to just broadcast our material to the whole world. University of Phoenix does that pretty well. BYU does that pretty well. I think we have a different need and mission with respect to online education, which is it becomes a tool to help the on-campus student. So I say this for a number of reasons. Part of it's my own personal philosophy. I'm an old, unrepentant philosopher. I believe in the magic of the classroom. And it's really hard to replace that entirely by online education. Having said that, we are going to have to use technology in ways to free up resources for us so that we can make better uses of our physical infrastructure and faculty time. So not thinking about just sending out our material to the world, but how do we design hybrid courses, how do we design a targeted set of online courses in a more aggressive way than we have, especially for courses that are bottlenecks for graduation and developments within the major. That will be our focus. We're in the process of trying to hire the right person and light a fire under their rear end to take us to the next level. So, can I say that publicly? I guess I just did. So, yeah.
Regarding a balance between inclusivity and rigorous academic quality, what conversation surrounds having a hard admissions deadline?
Well, we're getting there. Can I announce this? We just talked about that in President's Council this morning. We are moving to an application deadline as a first step in this process. We've actually had one. We haven't enforced it. But in response to this very issue, I've asked our teams to come forward and we've discussed it. We think the time is now that we have to start really applying that for a lot of reasons. One is that it helps with managing enrollment growth. But it also, you know, we find that so many of our students who come in that first week of school come in and go out the next the day, and we don't know how many classes to prepare for, how many instructors we need. So we've got a plan in place. I'm spilling this a little too soon, but you asked, so this will allow us to have a couple of weeks of preparation with a harder sense for how many students we're going to deal with so that we can be better prepared the day that school starts. We're also going to shrink up the add-drop period so that students can't add for 3 weeks into a class. That's just too long to try to maintain class order. So we're at work at those things. Those stop short of we are going to have some options, especially because this will be new for people. So there will be some chances to still be admitted with a late fee and some other things. But this, I think, is a significant first step in that direction that will help us be more inclusive. And you can help us with the other thing we've got to do here, though, given the history of the institution, is really get out word to our students, friends, the community, so they're not caught off guard by this, so that people have a kind of a prospective understanding that this is coming and that we don't lose kids. This isn't an effort to try to keep people out, but to get them in and get ourselves situated so that we're better equipped to give them a first-rate experience. So. Yes.
President, you mentioned about contacting our legislators, and I want you to know that we're prepared with the table right outside here where they can stop and find out who their exact legislators are, and we have information on all of our legislators.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. That's terrific. Thank you for reminding us of that. And let me make a special plea to any of you that live outside of Utah County. Okay, we got pretty good alignment with our Utah County delegation. If any of you are in the Salt Lake area, please write your legislator, get your friends to write your legislator. This does move these legislators. If they start to feel the heat, they will take actions where they didn't think they could or would. We're starting to see a little bit of movement, so anything you can do to help build the momentum there would be welcome and appreciated. Yes?
So sorry to bring this theme up again, but the topic of seriousness.
Yeah.
As a faculty member, perhaps I'm alone on this, but what does it mean? Do you refer to as far as faculty? I consider myself pretty serious, and I think a few of other people I've talked to consider ourselves as well. So what is the role of faculty? Are we supposed to, what is our goal? What should we be fighting for?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I think it's important to stress that all of these themes are not, in many respects, new themes. It's not, and I've said this before, and so I'll say it again, this is not me stepping in and saying, gosh, UVU needs to get serious, okay? I see a lot of serious stuff going on this campus, intellectually, academically, and I applaud that. And so part of what I'm saying is we want to embrace that, we want to celebrate that, to the extent we can. We want to facilitate changes in places here and there that will continue to rise the level of our intellectual exchange, our academic inquiry. And so it's building off of those things that I think I hear you say that you're already doing and you're committed to, and learn from best practices of other universities in terms of what expectations are for faculty and students alike. So it's a building idea. It's not something I'm importing to the university. It's something I see and want to help expand and celebrate as just a really core thing of what we're about. Does that get at what you're? Okay. Yes.
you talked about increasing enrollment standards or admission standards. Are you implying that at some point we will not remain open admission?
I'm saying that's the challenge, that there's a great argument right now for enrollment standards. On the other side of the ledger, there's a great argument for keeping open admission. And I've said that before, that I want to keep open admission as long as possible. But that's going to, every year that's going to get harder and harder to do that and help us move forward with Sirius. So that's what I need us to think through as a community. Are there some creative ways that we could think about this that will help raise standards for students while still providing access? I don't have the answer today. What my hope is, my desire is that we can start a conversation, we can start some thinking about this and how we might achieve it so that we can pursue that dual mission. Any other questions? Yes. You bet. You get a raise.
So you mentioned this belief in the magic of the classroom.
Yeah.
When do you plan to visit your magic on the students? When are you going to start teaching some classes?
I did it today.
Okay.
It was the busiest day of my life, and I was in David Wilson's Upper Division History course talking about the philosophy of history. So I lectured last week, and I'm going to do it again next week. So I'm guest lecturing in David Wilson's class, and I do want to get into a rotation where I'm probably team teaching on a regular basis. I was planning to teach this semester, but wiser heads said, have you ever lived through a legislative session as a president? And I said no. They said maybe this isn't the semester to start. So I'm doing some targeted guest lecturing. I absolutely love it. It was the high part of the day, except for answering your question. So thank you for the challenge. I want to be there. I want to be in the classroom. Yeah.
President Obama has said that community college is his main thing and there's funds there. And I'm just wondering whether either not physically here or maybe physically at the same place, but having kind of two-tier type of an organization, something like that.
Well, those are just, I think, the questions we need to start asking and exploring. Is that a model, especially if there's federal resources out there for it, and we do a lot of that kind of thing? Would there be a way to structure that in a way that allows us to move forward on something that looks like a more traditional four-year university model while still retaining a community college model in-house in some two-tiered fashion? I think those are just the kinds of things that we're starting to think about. I'm thinking about. There may be other models. There are other models, but those are just the things that we ought to be considering. Yes.
With the recent changes in the legislature, how are they affecting our PBA discussions here on campus, including when will we be notified of the determinations?
Well, that will come later in April, and according to the traditional cycle for PBA. It is making things more fluid. We don't, we're being a little bit more cautious because we don't know exactly how things are going to play out. So we need to let the legislative cycle run its course and get a clear sense for what they're going to do or not do to us. And once we have that in mind, then we can go revisit all of the conversations, the presentations that were made in the fall and the conversations so that the decisions can come forward in April. Okay. All right. You've been a great audience. Thank you.